A congressional hearing about women's sports just exploded into one of the most chaotic exchanges of the year, and what triggered it reveals everything broken about how Washington operates. A Democratic representative stood up and asked a simple question. If we're so concerned about protecting girls, why isn't anyone talking about the actual documented victims in the Jeffrey Epstein files? What happened next was absolute mayhem. Accusations of being Epstein's fixer, denials of photographed evidence, and a room full of elected officials screaming past each other while the actual victims get ignored. This is what accountability looks like when it's weaponized instead of applied. The setting? House Judiciary Committee markup session on legislation banning transgender women from women's sports. Representative Sydney Kamlager-Dove from California takes the floor. And she's not here to debate sports policy. Let's play the clip.
Yeah, well, let's talk about privacy and protection and safety. For the record, I do want to protect our athletes. I want to protect our boy athletes. I want to protect our girl athletes. I want to protect our girls. The president of the NCAA, and I know this was shared earlier, did tell Congress that there are less than 10, and not all of them are transgender women. There are less than 10 of the more than 500,000 NCAA athletes that this bill and these kinds of bills would be targeting. That is a small number. That is a small number to be using up so much of this committee's time when there are legitimate issues that are actually impacting someone's livelihood and their ability to be alive and to live safely. If we are going to talk about keeping predators out of our sports, I mean, the biggest predator is the NCAA mafia that is so focused on the bodies of our athletes and making revenue, getting more and more money. Scholarship's not a priority. Their mental health isn't a priority. Their physical health isn't a priority. Why don't we talk about how to rein that entity in? But we don't. We don't. Why don't we talk about, yes, the pedophiles who have preyed on our young athletes, our boy athletes and our girl athletes? Larry Nassar was a name that was brought up. Where is the horror and outrage and shock over what that individual did? At one point, we were debating a bill where adults would be responsible for checking the genitalia of young kids, like to make a determination of who was a boy or who was a girl. And I'm sorry, no one here who is a parent or is a godparent or an uncle or an aunt to a child would be okay hearing some story of some rando who's now been authorized to check the genitalia of their child because they just want to make sure of something. Get out of here. Get out of here. Go straight to jail. And if you're talking about, well, the women are the victims, the girls are the victims, let's fight for them. Yeah, okay. There's a list of young girls in those Epstein files. There is a young child, a minor, okay, in her journal, documentation of exploitation, sexual abuse, rape, and forced abortion, a survivor of Epstein. We're not talking about her. In this latest tranche, not the full release of the files. An 11 or 12 or 13-year-old girl, naked, tied up, spread with her legs open, on a man's knee, being burned with a magnifying glass. No one is sharing any outrage over that. I see your face. Exactly. That was my face too. Disgusting, egregious, horrific. A child. If that was your child, when you have a DOJ that is putting the names of these women out there to be attacked and abused and vilified, and no one has any outrage, but you're going to go up in arms and have all this drama about a transgender person. Most people, real talk, have never even met a transgender person. It's like a boogeyman. Like, talk about, fight for these girls that are in these files that were abused, burned up, raped. I yield back.
And that's when everything detonates. Representative Harriet Hageman from Wyoming immediately requests time. Let's play the clip.
Just very briefly, I think that the Epstein files have now been mentioned upwards of 20 times during the course of this markup today, when what we're focusing on is whether we need to adopt a law to prevent men from participating in women's athletics. One person even made the accusation that there is this whole slew of powerful men who have been covering for Jeffrey Epstein and their abusers. Well, you want to know who actually ran cover for Epstein? Who actually covered for the abuser? Do you want to know who actually protected Jeffrey Epstein? Well, her name is Stacey Plaskett, and she is a Democrat representative from the Virgin Islands. So if you want to go in and look at the Epstein files, why don't you go ahead and do a word search for Stacey Plaskett, representative from the Virgin Islands, the woman who was Jeffrey Epstein's fixer. So if you want to talk about powerful men covering for Epstein, I think Stacey Plaskett has something as well to answer for being Jeffrey Epstein's fixer. So I would start on that side of the aisle to determine what kind of work she was doing for Mr. Epstein, because we know that she was his fixer, and her name is in the Epstein files repeatedly. So I think that what we really need to focus on here is the bill at hand, which is whether men should be allowed to compete in women's sports. I think we need to get back and kind of focus what we're talking about here, and that's what it is. If you want to talk about Epstein, I think the first person we need to go to is Stacey Plaskett. If you want to talk about the issue at hand, let's focus on this. With that, I yield back.
This is an extraordinary accusation, calling a sitting member of Congress Epstein's fixer on the congressional record. And here's the thing. Hageman isn't entirely making this up. According to documents released from Epstein's estate and FDI files made public recently, Plaskett's connections are documented. She worked from 2007 to 2012 as general counsel for the Virgin Islands Economic Development Authority, the same office that granted $219.8 million in tax benefits to Epstein's financial trust company during that period. From 2013 to 2014, she worked directly for Erica Kellerhals, Epstein's longtime attorney and political fixer in the Virgin Islands. Kellerhals was the one who received Epstein's last will and testament 2 days before he died. Emails show Plaskett arranged to visit Epstein on Little St. James, his private island where sex trafficking occurred, for an 11 a.m. meeting in 2014. This was 6 years after Epstein's 2008 conviction. She visited the island again on May 18, 2019, just 2 months before Epstein's arrest on federal sex trafficking charges. Text messages show that in September 2018, Plaskett asked Epstein, "Would it be presumptuous to consider you a friend?" Epstein replied, "Privileged to be called friend." She shared non-public legislative information with him, texting, "You're the first person I told about IRS decisions affecting Virgin Islands tax residency rules." During the February 2019 Michael Cohen hearing, Epstein texted Plaskett suggestions about questions to ask, including telling her to ask about Rona, keeper of the secrets, referring to Trump assistant Rona Graff. Plaskett incorporated those suggestions into her questioning. Epstein donated $8,100 to Plaskett's campaigns, which she only returned to women's organizations after his 2019 arrest. So let's be completely transparent. This is bad, really bad. Working for Epstein's attorney, visiting his island years after his conviction, calling him a friend, sharing inside legislative information, taking his advice during a congressional hearing. None of that is defensible. If Plaskett enabled Epstein's operation in any capacity, she should face consequences. Full stop. But here's where Hageman's entire argument collapses into partisan theater. Representative Jamie Raskin immediately requests time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I rise in support of the gentlelady's amendment. Let me just respond immediately to what we just heard. Donald Trump was, by Jeffrey Epstein's own account, Jeffrey Epstein's closest friend for more than a decade. I'm happy to yield to the gentle lady from Wyoming if she chooses to deny that or has some evidence to rebuff that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, you don't accept any of the photographic?
No evidence of that whatsoever.
Have you ever seen a photograph of Jeffrey?
Who was your
I'm
attorney?
reclaiming my time, Ms. Hageman. Reclaiming my time, Ms. Hageman.
Who was Epstein's attorney?
I'm reclaiming my time.
The committee will come to order.
I'm very happy.
Mr. Raskin controls the time. Mr. Raskin.
There are tons of photographs of Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, which the gentlelady apparently chooses not to see with her own eyes. There's lots of video.
What's the last date of
There's
what?
lots of video evidence of it. They were best friends for more than a decade. Okay? You will find a lot of stuff out. If you are hinging your case on the idea that Donald Trump didn't know Jeffrey Epstein, you are in for a very serious public collapse if that's your argument. As this comes forward,
that wasn't my
you
argument.
cannot compare.
My argument is about Stacey Plaskett.
Excuse me, I'd like my time restored, okay?
The committee will be in order. Mr. Raskin controls the time, and he has not yielded. Mr. Raskin.
Stacey Plaskett is barely a comma in the encyclopedia of Donald Trump's complicity and involvement with Jeffrey Epstein and his international human sex trafficking ring. Okay, and if you don't understand that and you don't believe it, then you've not done anything to familiarize yourself with the evidence, Ms. Hageman. I'm sorry. And I know that your predecessor in office, Ms. Cheney, would have done that. She was scrupulous and she was studious and she took the facts seriously and she was not an ideologue who just fell for a cult leader. Okay? Now, back to the matter at hand. Presently, the Olympic Committee has already made the decision, I think, in more than half of the sports. So it's already decided, for example, that with respect to boxing, with respect to rugby, with respect to swimming, with respect to tennis, and with respect to volleyball, as I understand it, that all of these are limited to the sex assigned at birth. That's already been decided. So we are intervening now as the United States Congress to make a decision about a miscellaneous category of a handful of other sports, which have not even been mentioned by our colleagues, which appear to still be open to transgender athletes. Here are the ones that I see them are skateboarding, skiing and snowboarding, table tennis, ping pong, and then ultimate frisbee. Now, perhaps someone over there can explain why, when American citizens are being shot in the face by federal agents and the entire heartland of the country is in an uproar because of Donald Trump's private paramilitary army that nobody on the other side seems to want to talk about, we should be talking about whether or not transgender girls or women should be able to participate in ultimate frisbee competitions. Because that's really what we're talking about today. But they sure would much rather be talking about that than anything else. They don't want to talk about what's really in the Epstein files. I'm surprised, I'm stunned, I'm astonished, I'm flabbergasted by Ms. Hageman, who seems to go way beyond anything else I've heard from other Republicans. She seems to be in open denial that Donald Trump and Melania Trump had anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein. That's astonishing to me. I think she's setting herself for a huge public relations fall by going that far. Oh, here's some photographs, Ms. Hageman. How do you see about those? Do you think those are created by artificial intelligence? You got any problem with any of those pictures of your hero with Jeffrey Epstein, his closest friend for more than a decade? Thank you for bringing forth the photographic evidence. Keep that up for a while. Apparently some people haven't seen those pictures. They're very happy to talk about Stacey Plaskett, the non-voting delegate from the Virgin Islands, or Bill Clinton. And anybody who was involved in any crime should be punished for it. whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent. I'll say it right now. Will Ms. Hageman, the very distinguished gentle lady from Wyoming, say that? Will she say that Republicans should be punished for their crimes if they were complicit in a $1 billion international child sex trafficking ring? I don't think so. I don't think she'll say it, not if it's Donald Trump. It's all about Donald Trump following him off into a path of oblivion. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Is there
Raskin literally holds up photographs during the hearing. Multiple photos of Trump and Epstein together at Mar-a-Lago, at parties, at events throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. But let's not rely on just photographs. Let's go through the documented evidence, court records, flight logs, interviews, and Trump's own words. In 2002, Trump told New York Magazine, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life." Read that again. Many of them are on the younger side. Trump flew on Epstein's private jet, later dubbed the Lolita Express, at least 7 times between 1993 and 1997, according to Department of Justice flight logs. NBC archival footage from 1992 shows Trump and Epstein at a Mar-a-Lago party together, chatting and pointing at women dancing. Epstein attended Trump's 1993 wedding to Marla Maples. In 2003, Trump sent Epstein a birthday letter featuring a hand-drawn naked woman with Trump's signature positioned to mimic pubic hair, containing imagined dialogue where Trump says, "We have certain things in common, Jeffrey." It concludes, "A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." In August 2017, recordings obtained by the Daily Beast, Epstein himself described Trump as his closest friend for more than a decade, and claimed Trump first had sex with Melania on Epstein's plane. Now, Trump claims he had a falling out with Epstein around 2004 and hadn't spoken to him in 15 years by 2019. The explanations have varied: that Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago for being a creep, that Epstein harassed a member's daughter, that he stole spa employees. Mar-a-Lago records show Epstein's membership closed around October 2007, right when Epstein was indicted in Florida, about 8 months before he pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution from a minor. So when Hageman sits in that hearing and says there's absolutely no evidence that Trump and Epstein were close friends, she's either A, lying, B, never looked at a single photograph, C, never read a court document, D, never listened to Trump's own voice calling Epstein a terrific guy who likes women on the younger side. Raskin literally holds up photographs. This isn't debatable, it's documented. The hearing devolves into shouting.
May I inquire as to whether the gentleman with the ranking member accused the gentlelady of not telling the truth? I heard something to that effect and I might have misheard.
If the gentlelady was denying that Donald Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein, that would not be a truth that I could endorse in the world of objective reality.
This is my time. I never made that claim.
I'll yield back for now, Mr. Chairman.
Everybody calm down here, okay? The committee will be in order. I would remind members to direct their comments to the chair. The gentleman will continue in order. Oh, pardon me, gentlelady will continue in order.
Thank you. The point of this is that nobody has made that claim, yet in order to try to deflect attention from the fact that Stacey Plaskett was Jeffrey Epstein's fixer, the ranking member has become hysterical over the fact that there are published photographs of Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein. Nobody on this side has ever claimed otherwise or that they did not know each other. They absolutely did. But Donald Trump was not the attorney or the fixer for Jeffrey Epstein. Stacey Plaskett was. So the point that I am making is when you have accusations being made by the other side about powerful men covering up for Jeffrey Epstein, I think the very first person you need to look to is Stacey Plaskett, a powerful woman via New York and the Virgin Islands. That was the point. That doesn't have anything to do with Donald Trump. That has to do with whether Stacey Plaskett is associated with Jeffrey Epstein, and she clearly is, as is shown by the records. So if you are concerned about powerful people covering up for Jeffrey Epstein, perhaps you need to visit with Stacey Plaskett first. That was the point, Mr. Raskin, and I don't think there's anything further to say. I yield back.
The room erupts. Republicans demand that Raskin's words be stricken from the record. Democrats defend him. And somewhere in all of this chaos, the actual point gets completely buried. Here's what this hearing was supposed to be about: legislation banning transgender women from women's sports. And here's what Representative Kamlager Dove pointed out at the very beginning. According to NCAA President Charlie Baker's December 2024 testimony, there are fewer than 10 transgender athletes competing in college sports out of more than 510,000 total student athletes. That's 0.002% of NCAA athletes. But Congress is spending hours on this microscopic issue instead of addressing the documented systemic failures that allowed predators like Larry Nassar and Jeffrey Epstein to abuse hundreds of girls for decades. Larry Nassar abused over 265 women and girls. The FBI failed to investigate for 14 months. An estimated 70 to 120 additional victims were abused during that delay. That's a real crisis in protecting girls in sports. But we're not talking about institutional reforms. We're not talking about how USA Gymnastics, Michigan State University, and the FBI all failed those victims. Instead, Republicans are screaming about Plaskett to deflect from Trump. Democrats are screaming about Trump to deflect from Plaskett. And the actual victims, the girls in the Epstein files who were raped, trafficked, burned with magnifying glasses, forced into abortions, they're being used as political props in a partisan screaming match. Let me be crystal clear about this. Investigate everyone. Investigate Stacey Plaskett. Investigate Donald Trump. Investigate Bill Clinton. Investigate Prince Andrew. Investigate anyone and everyone who enabled, facilitated, or turned a blind eye to Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation. I don't care what party they're in. If they're guilty, they should face consequences. But what happened in that hearing wasn't about accountability. It was about deflection. Republicans brought up Plaskett not because they suddenly care about Epstein's enablers, but because Raskin brought up Trump's friendship with Epstein first. If they actually cared about investigating everyone connected to Epstein, Hageman would have said, "You're right, Raskin. Trump's friendship with Epstein is deeply troubling and should be investigated. And so should Plaskett's. Let's investigate them all." But that's not what she said. She denied Trump's connection entirely, despite overwhelming photographic, documentary, and testimonial evidence, while calling Plaskett Epstein's fixer. That's not accountability. That's partisanship using child abuse victims as political weapons. And the victims deserve better. They deserve real investigations that follow evidence wherever it leads, regardless of party affiliation. They deserve systemic reforms to prevent future institutional failures. They deserve a Congress that cares more about protecting children than protecting politicians. Instead, they got a hearing about 10 transgender athletes that turned into partisan theater where both sides protected their own, while children's suffering became a prop. That's not justice. This is what happens when accountability becomes entirely partisan, when evidence only matters if it implicates the other side, when protecting the party leader takes priority over protecting victims. If you want to see more breakdowns that cut through partisan noise and focus on documented evidence regardless of who it implicates, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Drop a comment. Do you think everyone connected to Epstein should be investigated, or only people from the party you don't support? Let's have an honest conversation.